Hello again, I'm Kenny Fikes, your host of the iKnow.media Roundtable, where we bring you conscientious clarity every week through empirical experience alongside reasoned application and analysis. Let's go around the horn.
Hey guys, I'm Elisa Simmons. I'm a Montessori guide in East Texas, and I am frustrated with our current administration.
Hi everyone, I'm Jay Ellis. I'm from Houston. I'm a mom of three. And I love this show. I love being able to be on this show with my comrades. It gives me a way to process some really uncomfortable emotions. And right now, I have a lot of those going on, from sadness to disappointment to frustration to fear to anger, all of that. And I'm glad that there's a forum to talk about some of what evokes those emotions. So I hope it helps you too tonight.
Awesome. I appreciate that. It helps me, and I feel the same way. I actually feel like I'm in a stage of stagnation. You know, we have these charts of positive slopes of growth, whether it is income or interest rates or whatever it is over time. And in terms of understanding things, I feel like I'm at a plateau because it's so doggone crazy that I almost don't even know what to think sometimes. So with that said, today's show is about Trump and the deal and the executive order. And as we've said in so many shows, a la Mr. Marvin Gaye, rest in peace, what's going on? Brother, 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 mercy, mercy, me. So, and to those who would say to us that have watched us some, and we've tried hard not to be sort of air quotes political and to try our best to remain objective. The analogy I have is, you know, if we said we don't believe in corporal punishment anymore, and we had this little kid who was 9, and we're like, we're not going to spank him anymore. We're not going to, but he just keeps doing stuff. Like every time, he won't stop. And so, folks, I guarantee you, we are doing our best, even if for some of you who support Trump believe it doesn't appear that way. We are doing our best to be objective. But it just seems like bad behavior is bad behavior. Things that are unprecedented, which isn't always wrong, because one of the problems I've had with government in the time, because I used to work for the state of Oklahoma, was when you try and change something for the better and people who are steeped in their old ways say, well, that's just the way we've done it. And you go, well, that doesn't make sense. However, we're not talking about those kinds of precedents. We're talking about the kinds of precedents that are really moving up against the law of protocol and good sense and what's even legal. For example, we're going to have a show after this one about what's happening in the Supreme Court. But for today, Mr. Trump mentioned something about an executive order to his crowd. And this is how people float things, right? He can come back and say, I wasn't serious, because they like to say that. They like to interpret what he really meant and say he wasn't serious. He floated the idea of an executive order to keep Biden from becoming president. And the other thing we're going to touch on today is the deal via TikTok. So, Jay, why don't you start us off, and then we'll go to you, Elisa.
Donald Trump, you know, he operates on a lot of different levels, and he's inappropriate on all of them. We have somebody who has no sense of decorum, period. Like, you know, when you start off with someone who is fundamentally unprofessional, it tends not to get better from there. He doesn't feel that he needs to set the tone as a leader for civility. You know, and just even with this as an example, he wants to, or is suggesting he will create an executive order because Joe Biden is dumb. Like, this is the language, right? So not only is it inappropriate, and unprofessional, it's not constructive. Whatever his concerns would be about Biden as president, hey, he's got a whole campaign season to lay those things forward. But he thought the best that he could do was to say he shouldn't be president because he's dumb. And so when we start on that level, how do we expect more? We know that we have someone who doesn't seem to bother to do any research. We know that the country's being led by someone who doesn't seem to really know the law or the Constitution or history or geography, and doesn't seem to care that he works and is surrounded within his own ignorance. So it can't get better. And he doesn't seem to respect anything or anyone. He doesn't respect the law, which is the authority. He doesn't respect the American people, not with the way he talks about them. He doesn't respect them enough to tell the truth. It's very difficult to be objective about him, because in order to be objective, we have to say, well, what's positive about this person, right? Because everybody's got something that might be redeeming. I have a hard time figuring out what is really redeeming about him. And therefore, it makes it difficult to have patience with him. It makes it difficult to be understanding. It makes it difficult to remain calm. It makes it difficult not to be reactionary like he is. So I just think that we're probably doing an incredible job right now of being patient and calm and trying to figure things out and trying to be measured in our response so we can be constructive and educate others and ask for change. But it's difficult.
Yeah, and it's also unfortunate and sad in many ways that he has been so successful in dividing us in ways. I know that I have some folks in my life that I've known for a very, very long time. And I have just begun to draw the line. I never thought that politics would be something I would draw the line with in terms of someone I know personally and care about, or at least have some sort of a meaningful working or friendly relationship with. But I've run into some scenarios recently where, just given the facts, unless you're incapable of seeing and hearing and reading and reasoning, and some of these people I know are able to reason, it's very difficult to respect and comprehend anything they have to say in support of Donald Trump because of all of the things in my mind that aren't reasons. And so it's really sad and unfortunate that he's really done a tremendous job of dividing us. What do you got, Alita?
One of the lessons that we teach in our school is that when, little kids on the playground, they're going to say inappropriate things. A lot of them are because they've heard their parents say it. But one of the things we do when kids go through a phase of calling each other names is that we look up the definition of those words, because most of the words we use to cut each other, we're using them wrong. And so it goes, when Donald Trump referred to Joe Biden as dumb, it was just like, so you don't, as a grown adult, you couldn't come up with a better word than dumb, because the definition of dumb is unable to speak. And it has not, like, so he's not dumb, he speaks. So you can't call him that. And so I think that on a very simplistic level, we have a president whose vocabulary is so disrespectful to the American people. And I watched his rally, and as I watched it and I watched his delivery, I found myself feeling a lot of things, but one of them was extremely judgmental of his crowd. And I was like, so this is what you want a leader to sound like. You want a leader to sound like the kid who's, you guys ever had the kid in class who didn't do the assignment, and he would get up in the front of class to do his language or his history assignment, and he would just start rattling off stuff to take up the 2 minutes, but he never said anything? That's what Donald Trump's rally was. It was like, well, let's see what we get a big clap on. Okay, we got a big clap on this. I'm going to go in hard about Robert E. Lee being an American hero in South Dakota. Like, this is going to go over well. And I think that's where my issue now is not, as Kenny was talking about cutting people off, I just am baffled at anyone I know that has a high education and cannot see how inappropriate this administration is. Ideally, this is starting with Trump. And so it's really confusing to me, especially with this new executive order. And we all know, what are they going to say to us? They're going to say, oh, he was just talking. You can't take a joke. What else has he been talking about? He sounds like an idiot. So I think that's, and Kenny, as you were saying, it's the way to feel it. Ooh, did they take that well? Did anybody call me on that being to the point of a dictator? Did anyone get that? No. Okay, I can do it for real. Oh, yeah. Oh, very close, Kenny.
So with that said, you said his crowd. You know, interestingly enough, it seems more like a mob than a crowd. It seems like a dangerous place to be if you're not in the club, and that's a mob. And they're easily excitable, and they start things like lock her up, which is sort of like, you know, burn her, right? Burn the witch in Salem, burn her, lock her up. You know, Jay talked about the president talking about an executive order and the reasoning being he's dumb. So we've talked about Martin Niemöller on this show before, when he talks about they came for the trade unionists and I did not speak up. Then they came for the fashion artists, and then they came for the labor unionists and I did not speak up. Then there was no one left when they came for me. I'm telling you, that's what we're living right now. I mean, if he can say, I'm going to issue an executive order so that one person can't be a president because I believe he's dumb. This sounds amazingly crazy and extreme, but let me tell you, anyone with a brain has watched what this man has said, and what I'm about to say is not crazy and extreme based on what he said. What's he gonna do next? Say, I think that woman's dumb. Don't let her have any children. You know, tie her tubes because she's dumb. But he's that close. He's that close. You know, he's telling us what to do in terms of private companies having to be sold, and then what you have to do with part of those proceeds, and his people make excuses. So and you talk about people that are highly educated, maybe it's, so there are two sides. There's the highly educated who make excuses and they tell you who they really are. They're being fleshed out for who they are. But then there's just a low information voter. And I'm going to read my little list of what they come up with. So whatever you say about Donald Trump, you know, he gave it to us a few years ago when he said I could go out in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and my people would support us. Well, here we are. Because if he did that, I don't think it's a stretch to say, here's what you'd hear. Well, what about Barack Obama and what happened in Iran? Well, what about Hillary Clinton and her emails and Benghazi? They'd say socialism and talk about it. They'd say the economy's good and talk about it. They'd say, well, abortion, and I'm a Christian, forget all the other Christian values. They talk about the courts, and that's good for us. They talk about the lying media. And so this is where we've become, and it's a sad, sad, sad state of affairs. What do you got, Jay?
The unfortunate thing is that it's not just uneducated people who support this man. If you just look at the people who hold office, who don't speak up, who have to know that a lot of this is just ridiculous, you know. Why doesn't anybody speak up and say, you know what, we can't have this talk of creating an executive order to stop someone from being president. First of all, we shouldn't, that's not how we do things, one. But two, over something so foolish, and you gave no examples of what would make him incompetent to hold office, because that's, I guess, what he was trying to articulate. Why is it that highly educated, highly paid senators, congressmen don't speak up and say something? And so it's not just the uneducated people. Those are the people, unfortunately, who are more likely to be reactionary. Mm-hmm. Those are the people who like to see, they're salacious. That's part of why they like him. America liked this man who said, you're fired. That's what he was known for, right? On The Apprentice. They love that. They love seeing somebody lose a job. They love seeing somebody suffer. They love seeing somebody being oppressed, demeaned, whatever. This is what they put in office. And so he speaks to them all the time, and it speaks to the ugliness in their hearts. These are the people who don't really have compassion for anyone. Because even with a strong immigration policy, how is it that you can look and see children suffering, children sometimes dying, allegations that in ICE children are being sexually assaulted, and you can still think that our present immigration policy is a positive one? So unfortunately, I think that he speaks to people who really have a lot of malice in their hearts. And they love this, and they respond to it, and he knows that. And he wants to rile them up. You know, this nonsense about, oh, I didn't really want the public to know how bad coronavirus was because I didn't want people to panic. You liar, yes you do. You just want them to panic about what you want them to panic about. You want them to panic and be afraid of a young Black man walking down the street or a group of Black people in their community. That's what you want them to panic about. You want them to feel like they are always at risk when it comes to brown people, whether those people are Mexican, from places in South America, or if they're Black. You want panic, just not over certain things. And that's really a scary leader. This is not a leader who wants peace. He has been doing nothing to broker peace. With all of the race issues that we've had as of late, I don't recall him ever standing up and saying, hey, how do we get the two sides together to come to one accord? No, he says we need to just make sure that we're arresting all those protesters. Let's go out there and be as violent with them as possible. All of those protesters are just here to destroy your community. It's not what a leader does.
So we talked about this last time. All the fear he's instilled is like watching Birth of a Nation again. I thought you were done. Did you have something else there?
I'm done.
Good. So you talked about panic. Yes, it's this whole Richard Nixon thing all over again. You good law-abiding white Americans who need to be afraid of these crazy brown people. We want you good voting Christian Democrats, Democratic people, to be afraid of these folks who don't want law and order. The playbook is there. And so I said in 2016, I'm no political expert pundit, I'm a guy with an opinion like so many other people, but that Trump was crazy like a fox. Now, I do believe that he just improvises and he throws stuff against the wall to see what'll stick sometimes. But there are people in his camp that are sort of crazy like a fox. Because if you watch the way these things unfold, it is it's very specifically and intentionally done when they roll certain things out. You talked about, Jay, you talked about the malice in people's hearts. How was your response ever seeing children in cages, little babies in cages? And I say babies, that can be, 5 years old is a baby to me, right? So how do you see them in cages and your cold ass hearted response is, well, their parents shouldn't have brought them here illegally? How in the hell is that any sane human being's response? But these are the people we're dealing with. They deflect from all that stuff. So I'm not going to call them evil. God didn't put me here to judge people, but I don't know what to call that. I got to figure it out. And this whole idea of his low, and I don't believe it's just uneducated. I was saying low information. But this idea of taking snapshots and videos of, if I tore my house up right now behind me and I were running against Elisa for county assessor, and I came in here and said, look how unorganized my house is. This is what it's going to be like if Lisa wins, right? Like, that's what he's done. He's shown you the ridiculousness of what's going on now and said, be very afraid, because this, what you see right now behind me in the country I'm running, that wasn't here 3 years ago, is what's going to be Joe Biden's America. Craziness. Elisa, what do you got?
I feel like when I speak with Trumpers, and I strongly believe we have to separate Republican and Trumper. And yeah, so when I speak
I'm
with
a Republican. By the way, I'm a Republican. Go ahead.
Yes, I completely, yes.
Wow.
Right, completely. There has to be a separation between Republican and Trumpers. And when I speak with Trumpers and I try to make them understand how, as a person who's a huge majority of my family members are Black or Hispanic, and a huge amount of my friend base are Black or Hispanic. And so I will try to explain to the people I know that are Trumpers, that why this looks scary. Their first thing is, I don't understand why you have to make everything about race. I've never heard Donald Trump talk about race. He never talks about people. I need you to go back. I'm speaking specifically to them and anyone with an education or not an education, I'm sorry, anyone with the ability to analyze anything. Go back and look at the last 8 presidential campaigns and show me where Ronald Reagan staged people behind him that said Blacks for Reagan, Hispanics for Reagan, there was none. There was no blacks for Bush, blacks for Obama, whites for Obama. All when his campaign rallies are all about race. They have their 4 black people up there with the black sign and the Asians for Trump, and he's doing it. So it's when you speak to someone and you think they're being sensitive about the racial issues that Trumpers make other people feel, you need to look at Trump and really decide, this man brings up race nonstop. You need to learn how to read this code.
Well, I think they also either don't know, which I don't really want to give them credit for, or they just leave out the facts. In other words, if Jay Cherie asked me if I stopped at 3 places on the way to meet you guys and I was late, and I said I stopped at 1 place and the 2nd place and I don't mention the 3rd, I intentionally left that out. So when people say why do you have to make it about race? Maybe you should say, what about the Central Park 5? What about housing? What about a number of things with Trump? So he is about race. And that's almost, I don't want to insult anyone that's your friend or family, but that's kind of a silly question.
Well,
It's like why do we make it about politics? I don't know. We're talking about politics, we're talking about life, we're talking about the temperature of the country.
Well, I think, you know what, Kenny, for speaking about race is a really sensitive subject to a huge amount of white people. Rather, they are super, super woke and super, super, I want to be the best ally in the world, to the ones that are super racist. I have repeatedly, when George Floyd, the 2 double first names kill me. When he was killed, and I spoke with a huge amount of white people about race, after 2 weeks, they were just like, I'm mentally exhausted. I don't want to speak about race anymore. And I was like, well, this is what it's like for the majority of my friends and family members. We speak about race, if not every other day. Most of the time it's daily though. And so it's like, go ahead.
Yeah, so that speaks volumes. People who are affected by racism don't have an opportunity to say, time out, we don't want to deal with it anymore. So, and people who are benefiting by something find it uncomfortable to talk about it. And it's not always for bad reasons or, because they're bad people or anything like that. They just don't do it. I mean, you find people who are extremely wealthy where money is no more of an object than breathing in a molecule of oxygen, or an atom of oxygen, whatever it is. People who are benefited by race, i.e. white people in general, don't many times want to talk about race because it's uncomfortable. It benefits them, and what is there to talk about anyway? Just like talking about money, anyone can go get it. Jay, what do you got?
Well, I mean, it's not like the rest of us don't get tired about talking about race. We do. As Black people, I mean, Jesus, it's exhausting. It's beyond exhausting. The difference is that we don't have the luxury of stopping. We may take a break from it, find some more energy to continue the discussion, but we can't afford to not talk about it. For those people though who are questioning, why are you making it about race? You know what? Let's not make it about race. Let's just remove race entirely from the discussion about this president, right? Because maybe if race was the only issue, then I go back to what I said before, maybe we could find something redeeming about him or his presidency. But we really can't. He chooses to be uninformed about everything. That's a fundamental problem when you're leading people. He chooses to be impulsive in the things that he says, just says whatever off the top of his head. He doesn't even read from the speeches that have been prepared for him. And he ends up putting a lot of false information out there. He's proven himself to be inherently dishonest. He doesn't mind standing in front of the nation and telling an absolute lie. And he's so bold with it that, you guys remember in the last campaign, he would be in a debate with Hillary Clinton and he'd just throw something out there. It didn't have to be right. After a while, it was almost a joke, all the fact checking that had to go on after the debates. It was constant. And I mean, the dozens and hundreds of things that were fact checked and wrong. These things were problems. He has a lack of integrity. So even if you don't give a damn about his concept of race, He is a horrible leader. And he has the ability to create such havoc, not just for America, but the world. He has had a negative impact on the globe. So don't worry about the race. Look at all this other stuff and tell me why you would want to elect this person and have them continue to represent you for 4 more years.
So I agree. It doesn't have to be all about race. It's just so obvious with him. But race comes up for certain other reasons. So I often have said to people before we ever get to the subject matter of race, he's just a terrible human being. And we've talked about this on the show again. Would you want him to marry your daughter if you know, he was the guy marrying your daughter? Would you want him to marry your mother? Or would you want to like be friends with him or be your brother-in-law? And yeah, he's just a terrible guy. Listen, I'm gonna look in the camera as I am now and say to all men who have daughters, right? We know how we look at our daughters. We know how we feel about our daughters. There's something terribly wrong when a man looks at his daughter and says, she want my daughter, I'd date her. You know how sick that is, and how you have to think, and how your mind has to work. So go ahead and tell me Hillary Clinton, Obama, Benghazi, that's who he is. That's the kind of guy we elected. A man who looked at his own daughter and said, oh, if she weren't my daughter, I'd date her. That's freaking sick. It is, just to process that. Now, I think we're wrapping up early today on that one. You guys got anything to go? No?
Keep fighting the good fight. It's tough. We have to like have energy for each other. Because when I'm tired, I need one of you to kind of just hold me up for a minute, and likewise for you, because we can't afford to stop the fight, and especially not now. We cannot let up, because election day could end up being either a great opportunity for America to turn the tide of what's going on, or it will be 4 years of worse than what we have seen. It will not get better if he's reelected.
So Lisa, why don't you take us out with telling people what they need to do to see more of our show and get us some hits?
Hey guys, if you enjoyed our show or want to see it going, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye-bye. See you guys next time.